The Vraxian fleet emerged from the depths of space like a storm. It wasn't a gradual approach. It was a sudden, violent rupture in the fabric of reality itself. The first human detection systems, barely able to process the magnitude of the event, triggered alarms across the globe. Satellite arrays screamed with warnings. A million voices went silent as governments and military forces scrambled to comprehend what was happening. At first, humanity believed it was an anomaly, an asteroid field, perhaps, a cosmic storm. But nothing could explain the colossal warships now coming into view, each one large enough to block out the sun. Their surface was a sickly, metallic black, with jagged spires and weapons protruding like the claws of some ancient beast. They didn't look like ships at all. They looked like predators. News reports flooded in from all corners of the Earth. The initial impact zones had already been hit. Moscow, New York City, Beijing, Paris. The world's most populous and powerful cities had already become nothing more than craters. The Vraxians were thorough. Their weapons, capable of devastating entire continents, wiped humanity's greatest achievements off the map in a matter of hours. The global panic was immediate. People flooded streets, crying out for answers that weren't there. The military was useless against the overwhelming force of the invaders. Earth's greatest technological marvels, fighter jets, high-tech drones, and artillery, were nothing more than toys against the Vraxian war machines. The invaders' shields rendered any form of resistance useless, while their weapons obliterated any human attempt to retaliate. It seemed there was no hope. It was the military command center in Alaska where the first real resistance was born. General Sophia Kane, a seasoned leader known for her composure under fire, stood at the helm of a shattered defense. The commanders under her were frazzled, their eyes wide with disbelief as they watched Earth's major cities burn on their screens. But it was Kane who stood unfazed, staring out the window at the destruction. "We've only got one option," Kane said, her voice steady, despite the storm that raged outside. She turned to her advisors, their faces pale, their hands trembling. "We fight, not because we think we can win, but because if we don't, Earth dies. We're not going out without a fight." It was a rallying cry for humanity. It wasn't just the military that sprang into action. Scientists, engineers, civilians, all across the globe, dropped whatever they were doing to fight back. Makeshift barricades were set up in cities where there were still survivors. People turned everyday tools into weapons. Hack drones became spy networks. A global movement took root in the face of overwhelming despair. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't going to roll over. General Kane's strategy was born from a cold, harsh reality. The Vraxians were too powerful, and they would not be defeated in a single battle. Instead, she ordered the formation of decentralized resistance cells that could disrupt and delay the enemy long enough to buy time. The first cell to emerge was led by a retired Marine, Captain James Rhodes, who had lost his wife in the initial bombardment of San Francisco. Fueled by rage and grief, he gathered a group of survivors and launched guerrilla attacks on the invaders, hitting supply lines and causing chaos where there had been none. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Meanwhile, in a secret bunker below the Arctic Circle, Dr. Clara Vasquez, one of Earth's leading theoretical physicists, worked tirelessly to analyze the Vraxian ships. She was part of a research team that had spent years developing theories about extraterrestrial technologies. Now those theories were their only hope for survival. With every piece of data they gathered, they learned more about the Vraxian ships, how they communicated, how their shields worked, and most importantly, where they might have weaknesses. "Tell me there's a way to hurt them," General Kane demanded as she looked down at the scientists working around her. "We're getting closer," Dr. Vasquez responded, her face drawn but determined. "They're not invincible, General. We can find their weak points, exploit their systems, but it's going to take time, and they won't give us that." Time was exactly what Kane didn't have. The Vraxians were moving quickly, and every passing hour felt like a death sentence for humanity. Yet in those early days of chaos, something unexpected happened. Despite their technological superiority, the Vraxians hadn't expected Earth's people to fight back. Not like this. The sheer unpredictability of humanity's response began to trouble the invaders. Their advanced tactics and perfect coordination were now being thrown off course by a resistance that had no clear leader, no grand strategy, just the instinct to survive. It was a long shot, but in that moment, General Kane and the world knew one thing: humanity wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. In the wake of the initial devastation, humanity's fragile resolve was tested. Major cities were reduced to rubble, and the once thriving global economy was in ruins. The world's governments, paralyzed by the scale of the invasion, were on the brink of collapse. But amid the chaos, something incredible began to happen. The human spirit refused to be crushed. From the streets of Paris to the mountains of Tibet, pockets of resistance sprang up. It was the civilians who led the charge. They fought not because they were trained soldiers, but because they had no choice. Families huddled in basements, crafting weapons from whatever they could find. Tools, farming equipment, even kitchen knives. People who had never known war became soldiers overnight, determined to hold on to their homes and their lives. In the midst of it all, Captain James Rhodes emerged as a symbol of hope. Having lost everything in the destruction of San Francisco, Rhodes' grief had hardened into a relentless drive for vengeance. He gathered a ragtag group of survivors, including civilians, former soldiers, and engineers, to form the first true resistance cell. They didn't have tanks or advanced weaponry, but they had something far more dangerous: ingenuity and an unyielding will to fight. Rhodes was a man of action, not words, and his first move was simple: disrupt. His team began launching small-scale guerrilla attacks, sabotaging Vraxian supply lines, blowing up their communication relays, and setting traps for their war machines. The Vraxians were caught off guard. Their superior forces and advanced technology hadn't prepared them for humans who fought in unpredictable, unconventional ways. The resistance didn't care about fair fights. They only cared about survival. It was the hacker, a young woman named Olivia Jong, who provided the first breakthrough. Initially, she had been holed up in a small underground network in New York, trying to stay off the Vraxian radar. But when she discovered a way to infiltrate the Vraxian communication systems, everything changed. Olivia wasn't a soldier, but her technical prowess made her invaluable. She started planting false signals into Vraxian channels, sending them on wild goose chases, and buying precious time for the resistance to strike. One fateful night, Rhodes and his team ambushed a convoy of Vraxian supply trucks near what was once the Colorado Rockies. The humans had no air support, no armored vehicles, only a handful of rifles and homemade explosives. They struck fast and hard, using the natural terrain to their advantage, hitting and running like ghosts in the night. It wasn't a big victory, but the destruction of just one Vraxian convoy sent shockwaves through the invaders' ranks. They hadn't anticipated this level of resistance. Meanwhile, General Sophia Kane, still coordinating what remained of Earth's military, was beginning to see the broader picture. While the Vraxians maintained an iron grip on Earth's major cities, small resistance cells had started popping up everywhere, sometimes in the most unlikely places. From underground bunkers in South America to abandoned subway tunnels in Europe, the spirit of humanity was spreading like wildfire. It was clear now: Earth wasn't just fighting back. They were organizing. Dr. Clara Vasquez's team of scientists also had a breakthrough. They'd managed to hack into a Vraxian warship's external communication feed, providing valuable insights into the enemy's technology. The Vraxians, it turned out, relied heavily on centralized communication networks that could be disrupted. Dr. Vasquez's team began working on ways to target those systems with increasing precision, giving humanity a potential edge they hadn't had before. The Vraxians might be technologically superior, but their overconfidence and reliance on their machines made them vulnerable to human unpredictability. But the greatest surprise came when a few Vraxian defectors reached out to the humans. One of the highest-ranking Vraxian officers, An alien named Tharkor had grown disillusioned with the Empire's oppressive tactics. He saw the destruction they had caused and the suffering they had inflicted on innocent civilians. He understood that, in their mindless quest for conquest, the Vraxians had failed to recognize something crucial: humanity's refusal to submit. "Your people," Tharkor said, his voice heavy with regret, "are not like the others we have encountered. They adapt. They fight. They do not surrender." Tharkor offered critical intelligence about the Vraxian command structure, detailing vulnerabilities in their war machines, which would give humanity a chance to strike at the heart of their invaders. The Vraxian defectors were hesitant, knowing they would be marked as traitors, but they were driven by something stronger than fear: guilt. They wanted to make things right. This unexpected alliance was a game-changer. It offered hope where there had been none. The information provided by Tharkor allowed the resistance to stage bolder and more effective strikes, targeting key Vraxian facilities and turning the tide in localized skirmishes. But it was only a start. The humans had no illusions. The Vraxians would come back stronger, angrier, and more determined to crush Earth's resistance. As humanity's efforts grew bolder, a new realization began to spread among the resistance. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to prove something to the Vraxians, to the galaxy, and to themselves. Humanity had nothing left to lose, and in their desperate struggle, they would forge a legend. As the days wore on, the grim reality of humanity's situation became clearer. Earth's cities had been reduced to ash, millions had perished, and the Vraxians showed no signs of slowing their assault. Yet the spark of defiance was far from extinguished. The resistance, now a unified force spread across the globe, had found a new weapon: their ability to adapt and innovate. Dr. Clara Vasquez and her team of scientists worked day and night, studying the Vraxian technology they had managed to capture. They pored over fragments of alien machinery, studying its energy signatures and understanding the mechanisms that made it tick. At first, their efforts seemed like a fool's errand. Vraxian technology was far beyond anything humanity had developed. But slowly, under Dr. Vasquez's leadership, a breakthrough came. The Vraxians relied heavily on a central energy grid that powered both their warships and their planetary defenses. If humanity could disrupt this system, it could render entire fleets powerless. The problem was that the grid was protected by nearly impenetrable energy shields. No conventional weapon could breach them. But the scientists had one advantage that the Vraxians hadn't anticipated: ingenuity. Dr. Vasquez and her team began developing a new weapon based on a combination of Vraxian technology and human engineering. The breakthrough came when they discovered that Vraxian shields were vulnerable to frequency modulation, something humans had already been experimenting with in their own communication systems. If they could match the shield frequency, it would cause them to destabilize and fail. The challenge was how to build a weapon capable of delivering that kind of disruption. But Dr. Vasquez wasn't just relying on technology. She was counting on the human drive to innovate under pressure. Meanwhile, in the field, Captain Rhodes and his team were becoming experts at striking where the Vraxians least expected it. They used Earth's natural terrain to their advantage, setting up ambushes in dense forests, desert canyons, and even the urban ruins left behind by the initial bombardments. Rhodes was not only a leader but a tactician, using his knowledge of human resilience to stage daring raids against Vraxian convoys. He had one simple rule: hit them fast, hit them hard, and disappear before they could retaliate. The hacker Olivia Jong, having built a reputation for her ability to infiltrate Vraxian communications, now found herself at the forefront of these missions. She'd found a way to send false signals to the Vraxian ships, effectively blinding them to humanity's movements. The Vraxians, with their overwhelming firepower, were used to fighting large coordinated armies, but humans had no such luxury. Instead, they relied on small independent cells to strike from multiple directions at once. Olivia's sabotage became invaluable, confusing the Vraxians and buying Rhodes's team crucial time to plant explosives, destroy supply depots, and cripple military installations. But their victories, small as they were, came at a cost. The Vraxians, unable to understand how these primitive humans were able to land any blows at all, ramped up their reprisals. Entire cities were leveled in retaliation for every resistance victory. General Kane, stationed in the underground military base in Alaska, watched as Earth's people paid a heavy price for every inch of ground they gained. The global alliance she had worked so tirelessly to maintain was beginning to fracture. Tensions rose between nations, with some questioning whether the continued fight was worth the growing losses. "I won't sugarcoat this," Kane said during one of her rare briefings. "We're losing people every day. But every time we fight back, we show the Vraxians that we're not going to give up. We're not going to be their playthings." The speech was a call to arms, and it resonated. For those who remained, there was no question about whether to fight. There was only how. They had discovered that the Vraxians' overconfidence was their greatest flaw. They believed that Earth was too divided, too primitive, to ever unite against them. They had underestimated humanity's adaptability and willpower. In the heart of a devastated London, a new offensive was planned. The scientists' new weapon, the shield disruptor, was ready. Humanity's first real chance to turn the tide was at hand. The weapon wasn't perfect, but it was their best hope. The plan was simple. A small group of the best resistance fighters would infiltrate a Vraxian command post and deploy the disruptor directly into their central energy core. The night before the mission, Rhodes gathered his team in an abandoned warehouse, the only shelter they had for miles. The atmosphere was heavy. There was no illusion about the odds. This was a one-way mission. They would either succeed and cripple the Vraxian infrastructure or die trying. "We're not going to wait for them to come to us," Rhodes said, his voice low but resolute. "We're going to hit them where it hurts the most, and we're going to show them just what we're made of." As the team prepared for the mission, Dr. Vasquez and her team finalized the disruptor, ensuring it was powerful enough to breach the Vraxian defenses, but precise enough to avoid killing innocent civilians. Every piece of humanity's last hope now rested on this final act of defiance. The storm was coming, and the world would never be the same. But the resistance had made its choice. They would fight until the last breath. The plan to strike at the heart of the Vraxian infrastructure was in motion. The resistance had never faced anything like the mission ahead, daring, dangerous, and almost certainly lethal. But it was humanity's best chance to inflict real damage on the Vraxian war machine. The city of London, once bustling and full of life, had become a wasteland, its ruins providing the perfect backdrop for the operation. The team that would execute the mission was a mix of specialists. Rhodes as the leader, of course, along with Olivia Zhang for communication sabotage, and a small group of elite fighters trained in stealth and sabotage. Their objective was simple: infiltrate the Vraxian command center hidden beneath the city, plant the shield disruptor, and escape before the enemy could react. Failure was not an option. It was humanity's chance to make a real statement, to show the Vraxians that they weren't dealing with a broken planet, but a defiant species with teeth. The night was their ally as Rhodes and his team moved through the shadows of the ruined city. The skeletal remains of once grand structures loomed above them, a stark reminder of the price Earth had paid. But the soldiers, their faces grim but resolute, pressed forward. Every step was taken with deliberate care, aware that the slightest mistake could spell their doom. They had no backup, no reinforcements. If they failed, Earth would have no chance of fighting back. As they neared the Vraxian command post, they saw the first signs of enemy activity. Vraxian drones hovered in the air, their glowing eyes scanning for any sign of movement. These automated sentries had been designed to detect even the smallest human activity, and the resistance knew that a direct confrontation with them would mean certain death. Olivia Zhang, the hacker, was the key to neutralizing these drones. Her ability to manipulate Vraxian technology had already earned her the nickname, the Ghost in the Machine. And tonight, she would prove why. As the team crouched behind an old building, She connected a small device to her wrist, her fingers dancing over a series of holographic controls. The drones above began to twitch and hover erratically, confused by Olivia's interference. "Got them," she whispered, a grin of satisfaction on her face as the drones began to lose their sync and drift away from the target zone. The team moved quickly, keeping low to the ground, and entered the heart of the Vraxian command post. Inside, the atmosphere was sterile and cold, alien technology everywhere. The walls pulsed with an eerie glow, the air thick with the hum of machinery. At the center stood a massive control panel, surrounded by a dozen Vraxian officers, their sleek, reptilian forms barely visible in the dim light. Rhodes motioned for his team to spread out and stay silent. This wasn't just about planting the disruptor, it was about doing so without alerting the enemy to their presence. The team moved with precision, setting up the disruptor near the central control unit. Time was running out. They had only minutes before the Vraxians would return to this central hub, and if they didn't finish the mission by then, it would all be for nothing. Almost there, Rhodes muttered under his breath, sweat dripping down his brow. His heart was racing, adrenaline flooding his system. Every sense was heightened, every sound amplified. He glanced over at Olivia, who was working quickly to disable a nearby security console. Her face was tense, focused. And then, just as the last component of the disruptor was being set into place, the alarm rang out. A low, mechanical sound echoed through the facility, followed by a harsh, electronic voice, in a language the humans could barely comprehend. Movement detected. Initiating lockdown sequence. The entire team froze, their blood running cold. The Vraxians had detected them. The doors leading to the central chamber began to seal, and red lights flashed, painting the walls with an ominous glow. The countdown had begun. "Move. Now," Rhodes barked, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. They had seconds before the entire building went into lockdown. Olivia's fingers flew over the console, trying to override the lockdown sequence as Rhodes led the team toward the exit. They were too late. The Vraxians were already on their way. With no time to waste, the team sprang into action. Rhodes, armed with nothing more than a plasma rifle, fired on instinct, taking down the first two Vraxian officers who came into view. His aim was true, the plasma rounds burning through the air and striking the aliens with deadly precision. The rest of the team followed suit, fighting their way toward the exit with all the fury and desperation they could muster. But the Vraxians were relentless. More soldiers appeared in their path, and the team was forced to retreat deeper into the complex. It was Olivia who saved them in the end. As the group reached a narrow corridor, she hacked into the facility's mainframe, rerouting power to the emergency exit doors. With a hiss of hydraulics, the doors slid open just as a squad of Vraxian soldiers rounded the corner. The team sprinted through the door, Rhodes leading the way, and barely managed to escape the compound before it was sealed behind them. Outside, the sounds of the battle echoed in the distance, but they had done it. The shield disruptor was in place. The first major blow to the Vraxian infrastructure had been struck. As they melted into the shadows of the ruined city, Rhodes couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. It was small, yes, but it was something. A victory, no matter how fleeting, was still a victory. For the first time in weeks, humanity had something to hold on to. They had given the Vraxians a taste of their own medicine, and it felt good. The mission in London had been a success. Against all odds, the shield disruptor was in place, and the Vraxians' advanced defenses had been crippled. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had delivered a blow to the heart of the alien war machine. It wasn't much, but it was enough to send ripples through the invaders' ranks. Back in the underground base, General Sophia Kane watched the status reports come in. The data from London confirmed what the Resistance had hoped. The Vraxian fleets, once invulnerable to human attacks, were now vulnerable. The shield disruptor had done its job, rendering entire ships defenseless. It was a small window of opportunity, but it was enough to begin the next phase of the war. Kane knew they had to strike while the Vraxians were reeling. There would never be a better time. Captain Rhodes. Kane's voice crackled through the communication system. Prepare your team. We're going to hit them hard. Rhodes, weary but fueled by the fire of victory, nodded as he gathered his team in a war room that smelled of smoke and desperation. They had proven themselves capable once already, but this next mission would be even more dangerous. Their success in London had drawn the attention of the Vraxians. They wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The plan was simple. Take the fight directly to the Vraxians, while they were struggling to recalibrate their shields. The fleet above Earth was still vast, and they could not afford to allow them time to regroup. The Vraxians had scattered their ships across the atmosphere, many of them hovering above cities, waiting for the moment to crush the human resistance. If Rhodes and his team could infiltrate a nearby Vraxian warship and disable its power core, it would buy humanity more time, enough to turn the tide of the war. As Rhodes prepped his team for the mission, Olivia Jong, the hacker, worked furiously from her station. The Vraxians had grown wise to human interference, and their systems had become more sophisticated. She knew that her skills would be put to the ultimate test. The pressure weighed on her, but there was no turning back. I've hacked into their fleet's communication network, Olivia said, her eyes darting across multiple screens. They're using backup protocols to restore their shields, but there's a vulnerability. If we can hit the right node, their entire defense system will short-circuit. Good work, Olivia, Rhodes replied, looking over at her with a nod. I'll need that breach in the next hour. We move fast, we move quiet. The Vraxians won't expect us to strike so soon. With everything in place, the team geared up for their mission. They would be airborne soon, but there was no time to waste. Every second was precious. Rhodes stood in front of the team, eyes hard, voice steady. This isn't just about us anymore, he said, gripping his rifle. It's about the future of our planet. The Vraxians think they've broken us. They think we're weak. But we know something they don't. We know how to fight back, and we're going to show them what humans are really capable of. The team's resolve hardened. They were more than soldiers. They were the spark of humanity's resistance, and tonight they would strike at the heart of the Vraxian war machine once more. The skies above Earth were a battlefield now. The Resistance's strike force launched from their base, cloaked in stealth technology, making their way toward the heart of the Vraxian fleet. The journey was tense, with every human on board the craft fully aware of what was at stake. They had no illusions about the odds. They were up against the most advanced military the galaxy had ever known. But what they lacked in numbers and technology, they made up for in sheer determination. As they neared the Vraxian warship, Rhodes could see the gargantuan vessel looming in the distance, its black metallic hull shimmering in the starlight, its weapon systems ready to vaporize anything that dared approach. The team held their breath as the ship's exterior came into full view. Their approach had gone undetected so far, but they were running out of time. Any minute, the Vraxians would realize something was amiss. Olivia's voice cut through the tense silence. "We're in," she said, her fingers flying over her console. "I've hacked their firewalls, and I'm starting to overload their communications array. They won't know what hit them." The team descended upon the warship with speed and precision, their stealth suits rendering them invisible to enemy sensors. They slipped through the defenses, moving like shadows through the corridors of the ship. Their objective was clear: destroy the power core that kept the Vraxian ship alive. With that, they could disable the vessel's weapons and disrupt their command center, giving the Resistance a much-needed victory. Every step they took was calculated, every movement deliberate. The pressure was intense, but Rhodes knew that failure wasn't an option. They had come too far to turn back now. As they reached the heart of the Vraxian ship, Rhodes signaled for the team to set charges around the power core. Just as they were about to finish, alarms began blaring. The Vraxians had finally detected the breach. "We don't have much time," Rhodes yelled. Plant the charges and get out. Now. The countdown began. The seconds felt like hours as the countdown clock on Rhodes' wrist began ticking away. The alarms blared louder, reverberating through the hollow corridors of the Vraxian warship. The enemy had finally discovered the breach, but it was too late to stop them. The explosive charges planted around the core were set to trigger in under 2 minutes, and Rhodes knew that if they didn't escape now, they would be caught in the ship's final moments. "Move, move, move," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. The team scrambled to disengage, but it was already too late. The corridor ahead had been sealed, and from the shadows, Vraxian soldiers began to emerge. The cold, reptilian eyes of their foes gleamed with anger as they raised their weapons, the unmistakable hum of energy shields crackling in the air. "Ambush," Rhodes barked. "We're trapped." They fought back with everything they had. Rhodes fired his plasma rifle, the rounds tearing through the air, cutting down the first Vraxian soldier that stepped into their path. But there were too many of them, more than they had expected. The Vraxian warship wasn't just a vessel of destruction. It was also a trap designed to neutralize any threats that might dare to infiltrate. Olivia's hands flew over her console, trying to access any available systems to give them an edge. "I got their weapons systems offline," she shouted, her voice strained. "But they're locking down the doors to the escape pods. We're stuck here." "Then we'll make our own way out," Rhodes said grimly. The team retreated down a side corridor, their movements swift and calculated. Rhodes could hear the thundering footsteps of Vraxian soldiers pursuing them, but he didn't slow down. His mind raced. There had to be another exit, another way off this hellish ship. They reached a maintenance bay, the large doors sliding open to reveal a row of Vraxian fighter craft. Rhodes's eyes narrowed. "We're taking them," he said, nodding toward the sleek alien vessels. The fighters, designed for planetary bombardment and atmospheric combat, were a far cry from human spacecraft. But desperation was a powerful motivator. Olivia hacked into the control systems as the rest of the team prepared to board. "Flight controls are coming online," Olivia reported. "But we got about 3 minutes before they lock us out completely." The tension was unbearable. Each member of the team scrambled into the fighters, strapping themselves in. Rhodes took the lead, setting the course for Earth's atmosphere. The ship hummed to life, but the Vraxians were closing in on them fast. The screech of the warship's interior alarms blared, signaling the impending breach. But it was the countdown that haunted him, the seconds left before the charges detonated. "Olivia, get us the hell out of here." Rhodes barked as he initiated the thrusters. The ship lurched forward, but the Vraxians were relentless. Suddenly, a wave of energy blasts slammed into the rear of their craft, shaking it violently. "I've engaged their shield," Olivia shouted. "I'm rerouting power, trying to reinforce it." The ship bucked and groaned as their escape craft hurtled toward the docking bay doors. Rhodes gritted his teeth, steering the ship through tight corridors of the warship, weaving through the chaos of explosions and flames. The Vraxian soldiers' shots were relentless, but they were losing ground. Rhodes could sense the tension in the air as the alien forces realized their targets were escaping. "Almost there," Olivia cried, her eyes wide with determination. "Hold tight." Just as they reached the exit hatch, the ship shuddered with an enormous explosion. The ground trembled beneath them, and the bay doors shot open, revealing the stars outside. But as they broke free, the massive Vraxian warship began to fall apart in the distance. The charges had detonated, sending shockwaves through the vessel. Pieces of debris rained down from the sky as the ship, crippled beyond repair, began to break apart in the void. "We did it!" Olivia shouted as the team accelerated into the sky, the Vraxian fighters now racing to catch up. "Not yet," Rhodes replied grimly. "We're not out of this yet." The Vraxian fleet, realizing that one of their most advanced warships had just been destroyed, now scrambled to launch reinforcements. Rhodes could see the blips on his radar, the advancing fleet, and the fighters coming after them. He wasn't sure how much longer their stolen Vraxian craft would hold up, but they couldn't afford to stay and find out. "Everyone ready?" he asked, his voice steady despite the danger. "We're going to have to fight our way through." They had no other choice. The tide was turning, but it wasn't over. Not yet. The skies above Earth were full of chaos as Vraxian fighters pursued the Resistance, and the distant battle raged on. It was clear now. The Resistance had made their mark. Humanity was finally showing the Vraxians that they weren't just a species to be wiped out. They were a force to be reckoned with. The stolen Vraxian fighter craft tore through the atmosphere, its engine screeching under the strain of high-speed flight. Rhodes could feel the turbulence as they barreled through Earth's skies, dodging laser fire from the pursuing Vraxian fighters that were closing in from all directions. His hands gripped the controls tightly, his focus laser-sharp. There was no time to relax, no room for mistakes. One wrong move, and they would all be dead. "Come on, Olivia. How much longer?" Rhodes growled, the tension thick in his voice. His heart pounded in his chest, and his instincts screamed at him to push harder. "I'm working on it." Olivia's voice crackled through the comms, her voice strained but determined. "I've disabled their tracking systems, but these fighters are still locking on. We can't outrun them forever." They had made it past the Vraxian warship's defense perimeter, but now they were facing the full wrath of the remaining enemy fleet. The fighter jets pursuing them were relentless, every turn and dive followed by blasts of energy that rocked their craft. A hit, and their stolen ship would be nothing more than a burning hulk in the sky. "On your 6, shouted one of Rhodes' team members, Private Mendez, his voice tight with urgency. Rhodes swerved the fighter to the left, narrowly dodging a burst of plasma fire. The ship shook with the impact of near misses, the hull groaning under the pressure. They were on borrowed time, and every second brought them closer to a brutal end. "Olivia, we need to lose them now," Rhodes said through gritted teeth. "What's the plan?" Olivia's voice came back with determination. "I've hacked into the Vraxian fleet's communications. I'm sending them false coordinates. If I can convince them we're heading toward a decoy base on the dark side of the moon, we might get a few minutes of freedom." Rhodes nodded, his mind working as fast as his hands. The skies above Earth had become a deadly chessboard. With each move, they would either gain ground or lose everything. The fighter jets were relentless, but if Olivia's plan worked, they could make it. "Do it," he ordered. There was a brief silence, followed by Olivia's calm response. "Done. They're biting." The fleet's breaking off to intercept the decoy. Rhodes breathed a sigh of relief. For now, they had bought some time. But he knew this wasn't the end. The Vraxians wouldn't give up so easily. They were relentless hunters, and the escape would only be temporary. "What's the next step, Rhodes?" asked Lieutenant Hall, the team's weapons expert, his voice cool and controlled despite the chaos. "We can't stay out here forever." Rhodes glanced at the radar. The Vraxian fleet was pulling back, momentarily distracted, but they wouldn't be fooled for long. They needed to find a way to strike back, hard. "We head to the coordinates Olivia found earlier," Rhodes said, his voice steady. "We've got one last chance. If we can get to the Vraxian mothership's weak spot, we can deal a killing blow to their fleet." Olivia chimed in, her voice sharp with urgency. "It's risky. We're talking about infiltrating their home base. It's guarded more heavily than anything we've seen before. We have to take that risk," Rhodes replied firmly. "The Vraxians have taken our planet, and we're not about to let them have it for much longer. We hit them where it hurts, their heart. It's our best shot at turning this war around." The team exchanged uneasy glances. They knew what this mission meant. If they succeeded, they could end the war. If they failed, humanity would be wiped out. But there was no other choice. The Resistance couldn't afford to play it safe anymore. Rhodes' fighters soared into the distance, leading the way to the Vraxian mothership's hidden location deep in space. The stars twinkled around them as they entered the cold, empty vacuum. The Earth was a distant memory now, far behind them in the blackness of space. They were entering enemy territory, where every second brought them closer to the heart of the Vraxian Empire. If they could infiltrate the mothership, they might be able to cripple the enemy's command structure and destroy the fleet. Olivia's voice cut through the static of the comms again. I set a course. It's a 2-day trip, but we can make it there undetected if we stick to the outer fringe of their territory. We'll need to be fast and stealthy. Understood, Rhodes replied. We rest for now, but stay sharp, everyone. The real fight is just ahead. As the team settled into the quiet of space, the enormity of what lay before them settled over each of them. They were about to take the fight directly to the heart of the Vraxian Empire. If they succeeded, they could turn the tide of the war for good. If they failed, it would be the last stand of humanity. Rhodes didn't think about failure. Not yet. He focused only on the mission ahead, on the fight that had to be won. For Earth, for humanity, and for everything they had lost. 2 days passed in tense silence, the vast emptiness of space pressing in on them as they navigated toward the Vraxian mothership. The stolen fighter craft was eerily quiet, its systems running on borrowed time. Rhodes could feel the weight of the moment settling in. Every small noise, every flicker of light from the control panels, seemed amplified in the suffocating stillness of space. His team had trained for this moment, but the reality of it was different. Now they weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting to end a war. Olivia's voice broke the silence. We're approaching the mothership's perimeter. I'm starting to make the final adjustments to our stealth systems. The Vraxians will be looking for us, but they won't know we're here unless we slip up. Rhodes nodded, his fingers tightening around the controls. They were close. So close. The Vraxian mothership loomed ahead, its massive form almost ghostly against the backdrop of distant stars. It was the heart of their military might, the center of their operations. If they could disable it, they could cripple the Vraxian war effort and bring an end to their invasion. The mothership's defenses were formidable. Rhodes knew that sneaking in undetected was their best, and only, option. They couldn't afford a direct confrontation. Not yet. Everyone stay alert, Rhodes ordered. We'll slip through the outer defenses first, then make our way to the central command. That's where we'll plant the charges. We'll get in, do the job, and get out. Quick and clean. The team nodded, preparing themselves for what was to come. They had trained for this moment, and they knew their roles. But as they approached the mothership's docking bay, a sense of finality gripped them. This was it, the last assault. Olivia patched into the Vraxian network, her fingers dancing over the console as she worked to override the docking bay's security protocols. A moment later, the bay doors opened, revealing the cold, metal interior. The team moved swiftly, silent as shadows, their every step calculated. The craft's stealth systems kept them hidden from the Vraxian sensors, but they couldn't rely on that forever. They had to act quickly. Inside the mothership, the team split up, each member moving toward their designated objective. Rhodes led the way to the central command room, where the main power core was located. The mission was simple: plant the explosive charges, disable the ship's primary systems, and get out before they were discovered. But as they neared their target, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Vraxian soldiers patrolling the area were only a few meters away. Rhodes held up a fist, signaling for the team to stop. He motioned for Hall and Mendez to take positions on either side of the corridor. They would need to neutralize the guards silently. Rhodes moved with practiced precision. He crouched low, his weapon ready. Hall and Mendez followed suit, each taking down a soldier in a blur of motion. The Vraxians didn't have time to react. Within moments, the corridor was clear. Clear, Rhodes whispered, his voice barely audible. He turned to Olivia, who was hacking into the control panel near the power core. "I've got it," she said. "The countdown begins now. You have 10 minutes before the charges go off." "Understood," Rhodes replied. He turned to his team. checking their weapons and ensuring they were ready for the next phase of the mission. They'd planted the charges, but the real danger was about to begin. Suddenly, the ship's alarms blared. Red lights flashed as the Vraxians realized they had been infiltrated. The hull of the ship rumbled as enemy reinforcements poured into the command room, their weapons primed. "It's time to fight," Rhodes said, his voice low but filled with determination. "We hold this room as long as we can." The team positioned themselves strategically, taking cover behind consoles and walls as the Vraxians charged forward. The firefight that ensued was intense, the blinding flashes of plasma fire lighting up the room. But the team held their ground. They were outnumbered, but they were fighting for something much larger than themselves. As the countdown clock ticked down, the team fought with everything they had. Each shot, each movement, was a testament to the years of preparation, the sacrifices, and the belief that humanity could still win. 5 minutes. Rhodes fired again, the plasma shot sending a Vraxian soldier flying back. His team was making every shot count, but the enemy wasn't backing down. Reinforcements kept coming. 3 minutes. "Hold tight," Rhodes said, sweat dripping down his face. "We're almost there." The clock was ticking. The team had to hold the line just a little longer. They could feel it. The war was on the cusp of changing. The Vraxians had underestimated humanity, and they were about to learn just how deadly that mistake was. 1 minute. "Everyone, brace for impact," Rhodes warned as the final wave of Vraxian soldiers rushed into the room. With a deafening explosion, the charges detonated, shaking the entire mothership to its core. The power went out, and the room was plunged into darkness. The Vraxians screamed in panic as the ship began to break apart. Rhodes and his team fought their way out, using the chaos to escape the mothership and race toward their waiting craft. The explosions rang in their ears as the massive Vraxian vessel crumbled behind them. The war was over. The Vraxians had lost, and humanity had proven that, no matter the odds, they were not to be underestimated. As Rhodes and his team flew back toward Earth, the sky burning with the remnants of the mothership's destruction, he allowed himself a brief moment of relief. Humanity was free. And the legend of their fight, their resilience, and their victory would echo throughout the stars.